Hello everyone, my name is Giulia Borodina and today I will be doing a demonstration painting based on Istanbul, painting one of the most magnificent mosques in Istanbul, Suleiman Mosque. I'm interested in developing a portfolio of work based on Istanbul. So this series of sessions hopefully will show you how the work develops, how to create a portfolio, how to focus on a similar subject and define it a bit more. So let's have a look at the screen. So I have a violet background prepared. So I made it to support the extra shadows of this lovely view, quite panoramic, quite a wide view of the archways and the beautiful courtyard of the mosque. And the darker background will help me with identifying some lights. So if I'll build up on positive and negative spaces and then start developing, looking into color, that will be my path into exploring this composition. So on my palette, I have some white, ochre, and some violet. And if I were to mix those three together, okay, and keep the paint quite runny, that will be a good darkness for the lines I'll need. So if I analyze my photograph, I have a key column here, kind of the center. It's not quite perfect center, so I need to identify if it would be, where will be my actual center of the picture, perhaps just somewhere here. Okay, so if this is my actual picture center, where my column center might be. Okay, so I might have the width of it somewhere here. Just roughly planning if I need to move it. Yeah, I will move it later on. Okay, it's quite a tall column. It goes out of the image. It's cropped. Might make it slightly narrow going to the top. Okay, I've got the direction there. I just use a sponge to wipe the lines. Those damp areas will dry shortly and you'll see it better. Okay, so maybe just giving it a rough plan there. We'll have a nice width of the what's happening. To the top of it, there's different levels of width at the top, which is quite a strange arrangement architecturally, but so one is a little bit lower and one is much higher, so they're not quite symmetrical. Okay, I'm going to let it dry for you to see it a little better. Okay, because my paint is quite runny, it's a little bit harder for it to, it reflects a lot. That liquid reflects a lot. Right, and now I can start planning my left-hand side and, sorry, right-hand side and left-hand side parts of the painting. Now I've got some helpful lines here. I've got a supportive metal structure which holds almost like belts, keeps the arches together and distributes the extra pressure. So that gives me an opportunity to compare, to find the spaces, the proportions. So if I were to divide my board here into half, my structural line probably need to come somewhere here. Again, roughly planning just to give us an idea of the angles. And we've got the columns. So I could have even drawn a line for the columns. going all the way this way. Where would it, if it would come out on the main side? Yeah, this line will come out here. So it's a little bit wider, roughly will come up somewhere here. Okay, good recap for our perspective. For the right, so for the right hand side of the painting, I'm going to start the perspectives from building the perspectives from the space right at the back. To know how far that back arch is, I need to find all of that horizontal space. So in comparison to my column, where is it going to be? So it's roughly going to be somewhere perhaps here. And again, something we can adjust perhaps later on, compare. Okay. And there's quite a lot of wall space on the right hand side from the arch. It's not, if I were to place again, so I'm comparing, measuring against my photograph. This is some extending the lines for that arch space, and then looking for this distance and this distance. Okay, so that space looks a little bit wider. So if I were to explain, divide all of this space into half, yeah, my arch is probably going to be somewhere here. So that space is wider than the other. So if I were bringing, so again, proportionally, approximately, I'm looking at the space, looking at the size of the arch. Okay, how do I check if that's correct height for the arch? Again, perhaps looking at the columns and domes. We need to fit about 1, 2, 3, 4 arches. I think the first one looking quite narrow, the first two, and then slightly wider ones. Okay, so perhaps something like this. And this is again slightly wider one. Okay. The reason for the different widths of the arches, it's nothing to do with perspective. It's how it's been built architecturally. I don't know if it was an amendment at some point. It was maybe a construction, something, but they are slightly different in the widths, which is quite fascinating to explore it. So if I were to place those spaces roughly here, it will tell me if I'm on the right spot. Yeah, or at least it will give me some guidance if I need to change shapes. Okay, so that one is there. Okay, and rough shapes for the domes. Again, just to visually recognize that. Try not to spend too much time doing it. So if I'm not correct, I've got an opportunity to work over. Okay, there's another one there. Okay, that's looking approximately right. And then let's connect my column and my further back arch, further distant one. Okay. And then let's maybe build up one of the closer full of the arches, or maybe one of the columns even. Okay, so that's maybe one of the closest standing columns, just as a line for the moment. Okay. Again, I'm using slightly more diluted paint, so I have got time to look back and evaluate. Okay, and then two columns are quite close, and other shapes of the columns we can't quite see as much. Okay, so that's a rhythm of the vertical lines, just double checking they are appearing vertical. I can look at their widths afterwards. Okay, now on the opposite side of the wall, there will be a similar rhythm, just of various reliefs, doorways. So they don't have to be in a similar order. Don't think they quite perfectly correspond. There are other things involved there structurally. Okay, and we've got a range of horizontal lines as well, which support the arches inside as well. I think I can see maybe a tiny bit higher this last line. Okay, and maybe this one a bit taller as well. Let me check. I was just touching the tip. Okay, and that one might be my arch somewhere here. Okay. Horizontal and vertical lines are easier to put when we work in perspectives. They give us much more clearer instructions. Okay. And let's work into, so we said we can see one of those polar arches across. And let's just symmetrically find the base for it. I think it's going to be a little bit more narrower here. Okay. And then I can build the rest of the shapes of the arches in a similar way. They will be mirroring that shape. They will be going parallel, doing parallel shapes with this first base of the arches I've drawn. Okay. We'll have one wall slightly wider opening, another one is slightly coming closer to us. I think I might put this one tiny bit even lower. Okay. So let's stop at that for the moment. And let's have a look on the another side. I have got another arch here, which is a side arch. So if I'll approximately leave it here and come back to look at its width properly. Okay, so something's going to happen here. So another structure. Now on the left. Oh, and if I've done that perspective, I could have done this perspective as well of those. Which will go through the base of the columns here as well. Okay. And something will go slightly sharper in angle here as well. Okay. Right, so let's come back to the left and find the presence of the two columns for this arcade. Okay, and it's looking for the spaces. Is that column right in the middle of all of that space? No, it's much further. So this is halfway through, so it's going to be much smaller, taking much smaller space for the left. And there will be a little more space left here, just behind to fit almost the pictures finishing on the furthest away column. Okay, just double checking. Yeah, I'm happy with that, at least for now. Okay. That will be in line with the bases here. Okay. And we've got the round bases for the columns on this side, little semi ovals, and we've got a square base for the columns on this side, which at the moment is not visible as much. Okay, so it's all observation and it's all identification of those shapes. Right, and let's find the arch which will be coming out here now. Okay, and the base here, so it's immediately made that space much taller. A moment ago it felt much more squashed and much more square-like. Okay, and another archway. Okay, the widths, we'll have a look at structures there as well later on. This comes off the page. And that width will come as a decorative shape. It's not extremely helpful that my lines are light when there are a lot of shadows in that area. But just be with me for now. We'll come back to that structure afterwards. I might just have a quick sketch of space for the last segment there. Okay, and let's have a look at the space at the back. Let's have a look at the space for the shape, and that's actually will give me an opportunity to make any amendments. I think the actual building will be a little further behind my columns for the distant wall. Okay, which means that the side mosque here will have to go slightly down, and it tells me that that angle is too steep. Might be just a little shallower. Okay. So that line needs to go a little shallower here. Okay, that makes sense, and I will be meeting somewhere far that end. I'll make that line a little stronger, so then we can see the new round shape. Maybe a little too steep. Okay, let's wipe it off. Wipe it off and compare again. Looks a little too. We're talking about a very minor change, but on a bigger scale, we'll see it. Okay, that looks better. Okay, and let's have a look at the shapes of the columns in that row and make the judgment as well. So this base is slightly shorter than the one on the left. Okay, it almost comes up here. Actually, that angle is steeper as well. Okay, and goes all the way. I think even steeper than that. Okay. And again, let's have a look at some of the arches. Just perhaps the shapes of them, kind of halfway through points of how much we see, might give us the opportunity to make those judgments of how many full arches we can see, of how many partially covered arches we can see. Okay, we can add the line which will connect them all as well. So now I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 arches. The first one is the widest, and they're getting smaller and smaller. There's a corner. Looks like I can fit more arches. So perhaps this space needs to be slightly wider. And this slightly narrow. Okay, and let's amend the space in here. Okay. The actual columns will be landing a little closer to the line I've drawn. And we have the water fountain at the front. Which it has its own pattern of small arches and spaces. I think it might be a little too big. Okay. Just check where the columns land at the base. Just have that a little more defined space there, so it structurally becomes more clear. Also to keep my So once I've done an overall planning, I can start tweaking things. For example, looking at the arches here. So because it's not perfectly symmetrical view of the arcade, that central line of the tops probably is going to be somewhere here. So all the shapes will be connecting. It's more of an imaginary line for the structure. Okay, some extra light there. Good, and let's have a look at the rooftops and the domes on this side as well. I quite like the minaret. Quite an elegant structure. I'll draw it as an even cylinder first, and then I can add balconies and textures after. It's quite a light structure. I might give it a quick wash of light ochre. We'll paint the sky soon. And that's we'll start looking at positive and negative spaces. So that's will give me a little bit of a space for the sky here as well. So we'll be able to start looking at those silhouettes for the columns. Okay, so let's have a look. There are little straight. I think that's my main arch here. So above it, there is a structure to identify it as a center. Okay. And the shallow domes. And some more domes. I might just place them as a group. All of them have a little base of their own. And then there is a group of other domes going slightly taller, almost like little steps with extra heights and levels. I'll keep some of the perspective lines and vertical lines for the identification. I think that will be enough to show that structure. Okay, there's loads of areas which are almost bleached on the photograph, but I'm gonna pick up the colors, making sure that's there seen. Okay. And then look for patterns of color later. Sometimes if you wanted to paint or sketch with paint a darker background, using chalks is very helpful as well. And you can also use a sponge to remove them and continue drawing, continue developing your drawing. It's quite a helpful tool, the chalks. You can use colored chalks, you can use white chalk, just to see some of the shapes and then paint over them, and that will fix them in place. The corners, the shapes. So I might just make this area all light for now. Perhaps further down the painting progress we'll identify it better. Okay. I just have a little bit more ochre with my white mixed here. Partially transparent, partially opaque, as I want to have that shape of the facade of the mosque identified. Okay. And then it's gonna come around and this way. Okay, so it starts seeing the positive spaces and spaces under the arches gives us some lovely rhythm. Okay, there. And the reason I was getting the extra light at the front here, the front of the mosque, is because I wanted to see some extra light under the arches. We see quite a lot of light in this paint in comparison to last week's. I'm gonna go for a tiny bit darker tone. I'm gonna use a dab of violet and ochre together to make find the patterns of light behind my arches. So let's have a look for some of the highlights here. Under the spaces under the arches overall, not overly full of shadows in comparison to this side. So that exaggeration will have to follow later, or that variety. Okay, this one is here. That will give me a shape of a column. Okay, that's what's there in the shadow. And then next shape is somewhere here. I'm not painting any doors or windows yet, just looking for overall shapes. And the back wall. Not quite perfectly. The shape got quite an interesting slant to those shadows. This light is not full. This part of the building is covering it as well. Okay, but the highlight on arch is more significant here. Okay. And my light is drying out, and I can see it's quite dark comparison what I need here. So diluted paint shows more the color of the background. But at least it's giving me an opportunity to make my decisions, adjust the shapes of the arches. Okay. Good. Just checking other spaces. I think that's good, and I'm ready to start working perhaps on the light for the courtyard, for the ground. Okay, it just gives me an opportunity to offset the columns. Looks quite a bright light. I'm sure it will dry darker as my process of building up. That will be perfect. So I'm just interested in that shape, its approximate direction, and how it will be reaching out for the side, because there will be quite a lot of cooler colors there as well. And another shape perhaps I should pay attention to, and not shapes, linear planning of the floor, which will slowly becomes less and less angled. Okay, easier to do it now. It's become more straighter. Close to the back, it looks totally horizontal. Right at the back, the same here. Okay. And planning these lines of perspective continuing and becoming that line. Okay, if I were to do them quite thin and light, the amendments and corrections and suggestions much more acceptable than not a set a rule. Got room for improvement. That light already need to go slightly higher. as it connects to what's inside of the arcade. We'll see, maybe this light is just going around the columns and it just spreads further out as well. I think that's what's happening now. So that shouldn't be restricting us. Okay, that's better. Just double checking if any of my arches here maybe a little bit overstretched. If I were to look at one of my top silhouettes and find the pattern on the ceiling, that circular pattern, I think that will give me an idea of amendment for the arch here, making it a little less stretched. And just for reference point and correction of the shape, if I were to make a medium darkness color, I can a bit darker. Create this space. I have different order of spaces with circle pattern and with a plain arch space. Slightly light, most importantly, structurally more sound. Right, I forgot to leave some space for the open arch here as well. Okay. So we start to have a little extra depth there as well. A little bit of extra glow there, but I think it will be settled after the new colors will come there. Okay. But a similar tone might come for one of them walls. Okay, there's the doorways. Quite nice to draw and explore. Draw, observe, investigate, finding things you might have not seen before. What are these doors are for? They're special prayer corners. They're little supply areas or storage or libraries, or because every mosque will have allocated kitchen, dining area for anybody who wants to come in. Got a library, got a hospital, so they will be all located in the outer structures of the courtyard. And stretch the light through here and soften it coming this way. Okay, and I think I'm ready to start looking at the sky and maybe some excuse me, extra highlights an area at the back. I just added to my palette some emerald green, phthalo blue, and ultramarine, and that dark color was my violet. And I want to start mixing them together. I'll start with some white and phthalo blue to identify some of the darker part of the sky. Okay, against my violet background, it looks quite light, but once this area becomes full of other colors, lighter colors, it will be seen as a darker pigment, slightly darker pigment than other light tones. Okay. Gonna come close to this structural belt. And it will draw itself the shape and the diagonal we need. I'll try to paint with opaque colors, so instead of diluting it, I'm gonna try to, actually this part could be used as a silhouette of my top of the column. And the low I'll go now, slightly lighter blue I'm going to use. Just making sure that line is in the same angle. If it will partially disappear, I can draw it back. So I need more moisture to spread, I'll just add extra paint. just see how it's all dry in its darkness. And continue on the other side. Making sure I'm mixing the color well, so there's no too much inconsistencies of. That's what I was doing wrong. So my sky is shown here, and this is my minaret. Got slightly mixed up. That's the start of the minaret in the column. Okay. Just found my way back. And slightly lighter tone as I'm going further down. I've got some lovely trees at the back, so I might leave some space for them instead of painting it all light immediately. Then that's will be quite a nice introduction of another color, but the dark violet, dark brown. Mhm. And that's slightly lighter tone. Make sure that the minaret looks quite nice and elegant. Maybe the sky has gone a little too low here. Mhm. And let's this blue to settle in the space before we do any other amendments for the sky. Okay, I'm going to add a little more emerald green to my fellow blue, and I want to have a little of that turquoise representing the grays for the domes. I think they're quite powerful. To decide what's going to be lighter, the dome or the sky. I think the sky will be lighter, perhaps, and the dome slightly darker. This means that I could mix a little more stronger pigment. So that contrast remains. Obviously, the domes will have lighter and darker tones as well. And perhaps I'll need to make part of the sky slightly lighter as well. Let's start with this. The shapes are quite small, so if I start playing with tone immediately, I can get lost in shapes. But if I'll start with a bulk of a similar color and of a similar darkness, then I can add more variety of tone and color to it as well. I'll have some more of that turquoise color. A number of different mosques in various parts of the world have that beautiful color, so that's why my feel is just to have that connection, for example, to the mosques in Samarkand and Tashkent. That beautiful rare turquoise color. Egyptians valued it quite a lot as well. So did the Persians. So it's quite a lot been used in various architectural elements. I'm gonna put a little more white in my sky. Just enough blue, enough white with a hint of blue in it. So then those domes will stand out more. I've just amended the angle of my board so it will be less reflective. So we can see that change in the sky. Perhaps a little too strong. At least having that blend. To make the connection. And again, I'm gonna let it dry and see how that much more opaque color will be appearing. Mhm. And just back down a little rough textures for the sky, so some clouds. Mhm. Which gives an opportunity for the domes to be light in areas away from the sky. Okay, where they overlap each other rather than touching the sky. A little gentler here. And also perhaps a tiny bit of a shadow, so one more highlight here. And a little more of a shadow, so if I'll increase the darkness of my turquoise. Okay, and having a gentle blend. Don't want those colors to be too strong. It's not overly shiny surface. The domes, but it gives a nice understanding of their depths. Okay, that's good. Just gonna soften some of these strong whites. I do go quite around, quite a shallow domes, which means that the light is touching all the top of the surface. Mhm. Good. Right, then let's put a little bit of green. I put emerald green with some ochre together. I think it will give me a slightly warmer shape. The green might be a little too light. If it is a little too light, I can add some violet and extra darker emerald green, and that's becoming a good connection now. I want to have the depths close to the domes here. I don't want to lose their shape. Can paint the arches and columns over. I think it will be much easier. A beautiful university gardens around the Suleymaniye Mosque. Loads of visitors and tourists admiring the picturesque views on the hill. I think I will place a little bit of green here as well. Maybe more variety of the green, of highlighted areas and shadows will show a greater space of the mature gardens on the hill. That's good. Perhaps tiny bit even something a little taller. Don't want to make the shapes quite perfect, round steepness. So perhaps a little whiter tone between the trees just to show that you can see the sky there. Mhm. Okay, so it's almost like that lovely oasis of green and fresh light behind. Now I'm ready to move on to some other cooler colors. Maybe using some white and ultramarine. And I'm interested into finding the light on the floor. I've got initially some warmth here. I think I'm partially going to have some warmth, but mainly looking at light and that coolness of the ultramarine blending with the light. Will give us the atmosphere of being in a cooler shadow, which is still surrounded by a lot of light. So it's a coolness of that space in the heat of the day. I'm using more or less the same color and darkness because I'm against establishing shape first, finding that space for it, its direction. And a little more. We can stretch some light across the back wall. Maybe not as bold in that light. It's almost like sunshine light, shadows, coolness, almost like a moonlight inside of the shadow. That wisdom of the scholars. Okay, and I want to have those arches perhaps having a little, if I mix small amount of ochre with ultramarine. If I were to add small amount of violet as well, it will start having more of a grayish blue rather than green in color. So in combination with other colors, it will start appearing more cooler. Not warm as the other wall. Mhm. Just a little more around this area. Just finding how big that column is going to be at the front. So it's quite exciting silver type of gray. If I would have used phthalo blue, it wouldn't have worked. So ultramarine is the color to mix with ochre. Mhm. And I perhaps even use some of this color to offset some of the shadows. In my previous work, I had a lot of heat in them painting. I looked at the extra warm colors to have that link of the heat. I think here I'll work on the coolness of the structures, and then perhaps touch it up with a bit of warmth, much later. Okay, so the floor surface a little too dark. Let's mix it. Yeah, that's quite similar. So let's find something in between. This is how you develop your work. You make those judgments, you make various judgments for similar motives, similar, maybe slightly different compositions, but similar subjects. And you play with that arrangement of light and work out what's more harmonious or what it's trying to tell us. Is one direction for the warm perspective, another direction for the actual light behind the columns and how softly it's moving down the shiny marble. Tiny bit more violet with ultramarine. Careful with making it too dark. I've lost my columns on this side, but I know where they're going to come. So I'm relaxed about painting the floor. Through them for now. It's a little extra light here. I think maybe more violet, but diluted version of it. Yes, that would be quite a good light. Okay, perhaps a little smudge of that light. Could have gone for a bigger brush, but because of fine angles and perspective, and also just constantly checking one color against another, I prefer to work with smaller strokes, or at least slightly smaller scale. I think that's what stay more darker. And feel a little more violet, paler violet coming through, and then everything is becoming a shadow. I think if I dilute my violet and ultramarine with some water and have partially transparent color, the dark background will immediately take on itself that depth. Just double check all these angles here, so nothing is jumping. Okay, this violet could be softer. Mhm. Right. Now if I blend, just stretch that color a little further. Hopefully it will not stay pale in color. Okay, something in between perhaps. It, and then that wall starts being much more warmer. Just making sure that my brush strokes don't disrupt the overall perception of the space. Perhaps support it more. Again, that silvery violet. Might be continuation of my shadows for the arches. And let's bring a little bit of darkness for them. Main columns. I just added a little black to my palette, as I can see that my strengths of the violet background could be even emphasized more with the darkness. So I'm mixing black with some violet. I think there's a little white present from a previous color. Okay, let's test it out here. Yeah, it's good. So that will tidy the space. Will give me a little extra structure at the front. Diluted version of the colors. It's quite good as well. I think I picked up some black by accident here somewhere. And I wanted a little more lighter tone. The column can change its color and darkness through its height. So I might bear that in mind. Want to see more violet there than black. Okay, this top part is reflecting at the moment. And because my board, for the purpose of being less reflective, gives me this third perspective on the screen. So I'm actually looking for the straightness of the column. I think it's okay, but maybe I need to step away and double check that. Okay, that's where my perspective is going. Just need to make sure that this column has got more weight to it. I think it's a little too slender, but doesn't have to be as dark. I'll use some more ochre and white and violet. Okay, just making it still a little light. I think some black on my brush doesn't allow it to be more fresh in color, so I'll persevere. And perhaps when it dries, I can make a darker tone there as well. As the columns are getting narrower, sorry, further away, I can start using a little bit more darker tones more strongly. Mhm. Again, that's given me an opportunity to compare that darkness with the darkness at the back. Perhaps some of the darknesses of the doors. Extra color which could come up here. Checking the tones um, of cooler colors against each other. For example, further distant arches looks much darker as we're going out more in the light. There's definitely more light present. That need to be done gradually. Now my highlights here perhaps are a little too dark. And that's okay. That was relevant at the time it was painted. So now let's find other spaces. I think I've got some more windows. Let's highlight, make the highlights a little extra stronger now. Back to white and ochre. And to mix in between tone, not as bold as white looking color, but much stronger. Just catching the light in different columns in a different way. It shows different materials and reflections of the surfaces as well, using the earlier layer as a sub-shadows, so not painting it all. That looks more magnificent and playful with light, instead of if I would have been painting each individual, let's say, column or arch in a very similar way. Now I'm going to bring an off-white color and again just add it in between a few areas. Topping up the freshness of the white as well. And the same could be gently touched up, almost dotted about for the areas important to the columns and arches. Shapes. So the light is starting to be more pronounced. And I'm going to use the same off-white color just to have a skimming light for the tops. It's just descending that light. Mhm. Even perhaps at its bases, it just could be just about competing with that light of coolness. Mhm. Shadows are back to strength. Sorry, shadows highlights. Well, the shadows springs back once the highlights are there. See a lovely pattern here as well. Maybe look at the geometrics of some of the larger shapes. Perhaps it's not as bold light, and I'm using a diluted color, so that bold light will soften later. We just made immediate connection with those buildings. And in between tones, because these shadows are way too deep. Maybe I'll leave some of the darker tones in the top. And a softer contrast below. The light within the passage at the back. I'll use a little bit of water. You can just spread the existing color upwards. It will settle much darker. Now double sure. Double check that my brush is almost clean. So I kept washing and drying my brush, wiping it. And I wanted some of that similar warmth partially. Then the depths we want to keep there as well. So maybe I'll show the depths from, sorry, by painting some smaller windows. I'll use the violet and a very small amount of black, mainly violet. And then this depth painting those silhouettes of and smaller brush just works its way around certain soft, sorry, certain delicate spaces. And the same, the pattern of windows. And doors is repeating, giving it lovely rhythm. And of course, the rhythm of dark tones on this side of the corner, and maybe a little more depth. So I'm trying not to make columns with the same volume or intention. So the light is changing and that distribution of it is changing as well. I think perhaps these are a little dark, but now they're working. So my recent dark additions are quite linear, but it's immediately adds structure and adds tension. So if earlier on after the drawing I was looking for pattern of color, pattern of light, pattern of various things, now I'm looking for still that little pattern, but mainly. So what I'm doing, I'm drawing and I'm painting a pattern now. It's good finding a little subtone. Well, this is a lovely work. You can just keep digging and finding more details and improving tones and seeing the colors settled. Look at how this one is now playing that lovely warmth. Maybe that similar tone will start coming elsewhere here, making it less flat but more attractive to that area. That's a lovely warmth, not over strong, but it's there. Let's get some more of those horizontal shapes of structure. As the color's drying, I'll be constantly adding and improving the quality of light, how much it shines. I'm just eating the color away, but I think that's will be fine. Just to make it a little more populated with people and give tiny bit extra tension. I quite like all this area, but just a little empty. Just to finish, make it alive. I'll use some darker tone. Um, Easier to do it if you have a dried up surface. So then if you make a mistake in size or volume or how many people you want to bring in, I just do a few shapes. Maybe somebody slightly larger scale here. And even eventually adding a little bit of red for the color of the jacket, so that warmth of the faces and heads. A little dab of emerald green. I've got some emerald green. I think I can do that. just emerald green and white. It will in the kind of monochromatic setting. So we have this entrance, slightly darker green. To see a little more of a shadow. And some light in the middle. I think the same could be done with small amount of red. I think I can see a little bit of a similar color. Even if it's not the same color, it's gives that hint of the color, the connection, the turquoise. Connection to that. Depth. Mm-hmm. And I just got a little bit of crimson. Just really want to put a little extra red. Just little dotted around. Maybe too much here. That's it. That's quite an exciting addition as well. Part of the red, stronger red going on the wall. Bring that extra heat. Almost like as again grounding of certain patterns. So I'm adding more of an impressionistic color, having a feel for the place and the depth. Non-stop play of colors, almost as an explosive fireworks from that corner now. It's how a little bit of red influenced the whole atmosphere of the painting. Suddenly get influenced by that. Okay, that's definitely enough. And I think I'm going to stop for today. Thank you very much for being patient and watching one of the developments of my thesis today. I hope you picked up a few tips and perhaps might even want to experiment with some of the colors or some of the segments, or putting a few colors together and exploring how they will start behaving for you as well. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you on another demonstration. Bye bye.